All right, shalom, shalom to the nation of Israel, shalom. All right, this is your brother Kazaki out of Great Millstone, New Orleans, coming at you with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai, right? But prior to getting started, we want to give our infinite honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Harakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone, who rule and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations be to the whole elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, all right? And the title of today's lesson is going to be Never Trust Thine Enemies, all right? That's the title of today's lesson. Is going to be Never Trust Thine Enemies, all right? And this kind of comes from, me just sitting down one day. I was talking to Jake, about, the world events, and he couldn't believe, that basically DJ Nero 47, is basically having these back and forths with people, with Israel, right? And just every time he tells them, not to do something, they pretty much go ahead and do it anyway, right? They're disregarding his words and things of that nature, which shows that, it's another way of showing that he's not in power, he's not in control. But, the point is, he couldn't begin to fathom that, understand, I'll say that what is that they could possibly have on him, that he'll be doing these things in the first place. Now we know he's in the EP files. I'll say that he's in the EP files, but he felt like it was pretty much something different, something more deeper, right? And he's right, because like I said, these people are not in power, they're not in control or whatever, and our people still basically looking for somebody to save them, man. Somebody of another nation, okay, to come up and to get things right, so everything will go back to so-called how it was, right? MAGA, that Make America Great Again spirit and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I could see Jake was just in a downhill spiral, not understanding on truly understanding on what's going on. Okay, I could see that at some point in time he's put his trust in DJ Nero 47, and he's failed him. Obviously he's failed him. Everything he said he was going to do, he didn't do, and he basically turned or turned his back from doing. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this precept real quick. Okay, 110 for this one to be too long. All right. This is Psalms 118 and verse 8. It says, "It is better to trust in the Lord, right, than to put confidence in man." All right. Anytime you put your trust, your confidence, right, you put all your eggs in one basket, on a man, okay, it's bound, it's bound to fail. Put your trust in the Lord. The Lord's going to guide you and direct you to the people that you need to talk to, right, which is the prophets, okay, the elders and apostles, at GMS, the different brothers that's a part of the body too as well, that's pushing his word in truth and sincerity. Now I bet any money if you were to go and talk to this Jake, about the scriptures, that would be unbelievable too as well, right? He's gonna be like, "There's no way," right? And that's because our people basically just lack the spirit, okay, right? They lack the basic understanding of the Lord, right? They don't know Him, and chances are they're not going to know Him, right? Because that's just their lot, and that's just what the basically the spirit that the Lord has them in. But you got to put your trust in the Lord, man. It's better that you put your trust in the Lord than to put your confidence in man, right? And there's a lot of things that people put their confidence in for man, right? They have, the first and foremost is the doctrines and philosophies, mainly of Esau, Edom, the Edomites, so-called white man. All right, they put their trust in his words, right? They put their confidence in his words, right? And the things that he says, right? So-called signs and all the rest of those kind of things, man. But the scriptures tell you, man, never trust thine enemies, man. This man is our enemy, right? And our people don't understand that that we even have an enemy. They think that We don't. People are still, in their own words, singing, "We shall overcome BS," and lighting, the whole thing when you light candles, you sing "Kumbayas" and all that. No, man. We have an enemy here on the earth. Okay. These scriptures tell you that the Lord is not coming back. To send peace with a sword, right? And why is that? Okay, that's to pay back all these different people, right, for the BS, okay, the different nations, the blasphemy, that has happened. All right, but I'm gonna go ahead and get another precept, right, because our people have that bad. All right. All right, this is Jeremiah 17 and verse 5. It says, thus saith the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man. Right? So he's letting you know, man. Okay, you put your trust, right? Which, if I'm not mistaken, the word faith goes back into trust. Being trustful, a trustfulness. Okay, you putting your trust in the wrong thing, man. Okay, and like I said, before, if I would have explained to them, break it down to, the tribes, where we come from, what we do as a people, what are our customs we need to go back to. Okay, what does the prophecy say about everything that's going on and what's happening? It would just go in one ear and out the other ear, man. And so yeah, so let's continue reading on. It says, be the man. I'm going to read it again. It says, thus saith the Lord. It says, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, okay, and make it flesh his arm. And it says, in whose heart departed from the Lord, right? Because we also have that factor into as well, which the elders, I believe it's the elder Apostle Tahar coined the phrase for the year, the year of apostates. I believe it's sellouts and agents. Okay, but it says, and one whose heart departed from the Lord, right? One whose mind, okay, Yalab, has left the Lord, man, putting your confidence in him, right? And that's pretty much what an apostate is, right? Somebody who used to believe in the faith, but they left the faith, man. Okay, they rebelled, became a rebel against their own belief. I believe in the online etymology it'll say, religion, but hey, we have that aspect too as well. All right. But the point is, don't put your trust in man. Don't put your trust in Esau. He is going to fail you 100% of the time, man. It's a guaranteed loss if you put your trust, in him, man. Put your trust in Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, man. Basically, telling the people to come back home, so to speak. Right? But our people refuse to repent. They refuse to acknowledge their sins. And they refuse change, right? Because this truth basically, comes with change, man. So they rather stay in darkness, be lied to, and stay the way they are because they're comfortable the way they are, man. All right? Let me go get this out of Sirach, right? All right, this is Sirach 12 and verse 10. It says, never trust thine enemy. Do not trust your enemy, man. Right? This devil has bitten many of people. Okay? And when I say bitten, okay, this as in a serpent. Right? The same way as the serpent, can't be trusted. Okay? In like manner, you can't trust this devil, man. He's going to, turn his back on you, which is pretty much this is what it's going to say, within the next few scriptures. And I'll just read it. It says, "For like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness." So the same way iron rusts, okay? All right, because as soon as, pretty much you you refine iron and air touches it, it begins an oxidation a process. Now that oxidation process may take, a long time for it to rust. Okay, when you're done with your final product, or depending on the quality of the refining process, okay, it may take a short time. Depending on how well you've knocked out, the different impurities and things of that nature. But the point is, it will rust, right? So the same way, Esau will show his horns at the end of the day. Okay, he's gonna show you that he's a madman. He's gonna show you that he shouldn't be in power, right? He's gonna show you that he can't be trusted, right? And the different people are seeing that. Okay, they got even so-called, whether the so-called truthists or whatever, people that's seeking truth, and they're just covering different stories and things of that nature, and they're saying, man, the things that this guy is saying is just simply a lie. He's just saying that he's just straight up not telling the truth. He's just straight up lying, man. And it could go just based off of his own words, just holding him to his own words. Anybody that's ever held the Lord to his word, man, it's always been, the Lord is perfect, okay, with being held to his word. So it's better to put your trust in Yahweh Bashim Al Shai, Yahweh being the Father, okay, and Yahweh Shai, being the Son, and then putting it in man, okay, and putting it in Esau. All right. It says, though he humble himself, okay, and go crouching, it said, yet take good heed and beware of him. Right. So though he, come off all, he might come off all peaceable and docile, right? He might say, he might be agreeing, he may say something crazy. I agree with you, whatever, on whatever you saying, and I'm with y'all right, man. The scriptures say beware of him, okay? Which is another way of saying not to be trusted, And it says, and thou shalt be unto him. Let's see, this says right here. Find out what this person is doing. All right. It says, and thou shalt be unto him if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust have been altogether wiped away. And it says, set him not by thee, lest when he had overthrown thee, he shall stand up in thy place. Right. So this devil, right, is looking. He's an opportunist, man. He's looking for a way to overthrow you at any avenue that he can overthrow you, man. Okay. That's the type of person that you're dealing with, right? So if you go, to putting your trust in the type of person, man, it's, that's on you, man. That's on you, okay? And many are gonna fall in that day, right? Because the scriptures tell you, though hand be joined in hand, the wicked, shall not go unpunished, okay? And it also says that everyone that shall be found shall be thrust through. I'm roughly paraphrasing on, it's in the book of Isaiah, okay? And it says, neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, right? So imagine a guy that's supposed to be your right hand man, okay? Right? Let's say hypothetically, the king, right? The king has a hand, right? The king is the right hand. The king has a right hand man, okay? And that man, he entrusts with all his, secrets, all of his, counsels, advice, you know, pretty much that man has been with the king for a long duration of time, where he can trust him, in the event that he gets, taken out or whatever the case may be. Okay. He's basically entrusting another man while helping him make those tough decisions. Okay. All right. Now, imagine a hand, right, to the king, okay, that is exact polar opposite of everything you're supposed to have in a hand, right? He's plotting against you, planning against you, right? He's leading you down false narratives, okay, bad counsels, all right? He's doing everything in his power to overthrow you, in his own way, in so many ways. But he's cunning with it, right? He's witty with it. He's tricky with it. That's the same thing as Esau Edom, man. So don't trust your enemy, right? We say this time and time again, okay, but we need to, emphasize the point, man, that Esau Edom, the Edomites, the so-called white man, is your enemy, Jake. No matter how you try to put it, why I got a friend that's a Edomite and he's cool. Okay. Jake will say some BS like that, man. And then before you know it, they ain't cool no more. Or, which is heavily prevalent within the nation of Israel, okay? Because the Lord is putting to death all kinds of Eves for for dating, Edomite men, right? We seeing a female, Israelite, a woman at the Israelite woman, Eves, basically, being put to death. It's just another one. Day by day, we just say another one. And that's because they trusted this devil, man. All right. And the Lord is making an example of him. He's telling you, this is how the Lord is speaking, right? The Lord is speaking through his judgment. All right, let's finish this off. It says, least he seek to take thy seat, and thou at the last remember my words, and be pricked therewith. He said, you better remember these words as if, you're being pricked, man. Right? Put this in the the spiritual memory bank, man. It's important. It's imperative. Right? It says, who will pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent, or any such as come nigh wild beast? So yeah, who's going to pity a man that's, bitten by a snake? The snake, the snake nature is just to bite you, man. And though it slithers, it coils, it curls, it, postures for an attack and things of that nature. Its natural nature is just simply to bite you, man. To to bite you. Okay. And the same thing with with wild beast. Okay. The natural nature of the wild beasts and lions and the tigers and the bears and different animals like that, is to hunt, okay, to kill, to track, all right, to prey, man. You're being preyed upon, right? And that's how Esau comes. He comes in the form of these different, animals or these different creatures, okay. Okay, he's coming to prey upon, the scriptures tell you, he's prey upon the lowly, okay, basically, the meek. All right. And it says, so one that goeth to a sinner and is defiled with him in his sins, who will pity? Right? So if you go to somebody that's a sinner, okay? You know let's just say, your partner, he basically is a piece of crap, man, right? He robs, he steals, right? He's basically a class A criminal, man. All right, and that guy, you know, you just so happen to be cool with, right? But you know what he's about. Long story short, you know what he does. Okay, you know his nature, you know his intent, right? He isn't gonna change just because he with you, you know. So if you go with him and join yourself to him, okay, and he goes and does something, and slack, I'm trying to find the words, but he basically goes and does something, and you get caught up in what he's doing, okay, then that's it. You know, you're gonna go down too. It's just that simple. You know, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Through the spirit and power, Yahweh Shemel Shai. Hey, look, man. The title of today's lesson is look. Never trust our enemies, man. And, there's plenty other scriptures. We have Isaiah 30, chapter Isaiah 31, I believe, goes into similar things. Hey, man, look, don't put your trust in your enemy. Okay, don't put your trust in, um, anything Esau has to offer, man. Some people put out there, they're putting their trust in the military. They're banking on the military taking out, all these different world leaders. That's where you hit the red button. And, that's wrong. It's off, man. He's going to fail. He's going to fall. That's prophesied in the scriptures. Okay. Some people put their trust in their money. Same thing. Some people are putting their trust in Esau's technology. Okay. The list goes on and on and on, right? It's never ending, okay, so to speak. But all right, like I said, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemel Shai, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying first and foremost to the hopeful elect. But prior to getting out of here, we want to give our infinite honor and glory to Yahweh Bashim Shai Bashim Harakadash. All right. And, double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations be to the hopeful elect. Kwam Yasha Allah, Baba Ba, and Shalom.